Well, good morning, Shaw viewers far and wide. What a day it is today. You know, I can't help it, but look around this morning at where we're filming from this morning, where our interview is from this morning. And if it isn't here at Lindsay Thurber Composite, the Comp, as some people call it, home to many, in fact, home to a bunch of our counselors, our grads from the Comp, Councillor Bruma, Councillor Jeffries, Councillor Lee, they all came through Lindsay Thurber Comp. And so right over here, Shaw viewers, is the library, actually a grade 10 or 12, I think 10 class, just over here. And I have Jayla with me this morning. She's going to do part of our interview this morning, so I'm always thrilled when I come out to see the next generation. I know I'm being boring now, I get that. I'm surrounded by students this morning, but you are the next generation. Like it or not, you're the next generation, so I say God bless you. So we're ready to go this morning, Jayla, so let's kick it off.
All right, how are you doing today?
Well, you know, I'm doing well. I will say, after a long council meeting, we were in council yesterday for about 11 hours, and that's a bit of a marathon for sure. You talk about a lot of things, you discuss a lot of things. The mayor is also chair of that meeting, so right. I'm sort of like the traffic cop, guiding matters. So I'm a little tired, which is typical after council meeting. But the opportunity to come out, especially to come out here this morning, is quite a tonic. And it's always great to connect with the Shaw audience and answer some questions and let them know what we did yesterday. So yeah.
That's great.
Thanks for your question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. So on Monday, City Council accepted the 2022 financial statements and annual financial report, as well as authorized the mayor and the chair of the audit committee to sign the financial statements on behalf of the council. Mayor Johnson, what do these financial statements enable us to do, and what is the overall picture they portray for the city's general economic position?
That's a great question. You know, the first thing I'll touch on is actually signing the statements. It might sound rudimentary, might sound pretty basic, but once you sign the statements, so myself and in this case, Councillor Barnstable, he's the chair of the audit committee. Once we sign those, we attest to their genuineness. So in other words, there is a guarantee placed by council that the financial statements that we presented yesterday are in fact accurate and can be relied on. So as rudimentary as that is, it's almost like if you started your car this morning and the manufacturer made no guarantee that you were in a safe position. It's similar sort of to that. So the financial statements themselves, the city's financial health has been hit. It's been hurt over the last 3-4 years or so, mainly because of COVID, which was a monster factor in how we were able to finance programs, especially things like transit, for example. You can imagine the challenges that we had around transit, our public spaces, our rec centers, those kinds of things were affected. So our revenues were down, land sales were down, those kinds of things that promote our revenues. And by extension, some of our expenses were up, although our expenses were within budget. Some of them were up, particularly emergency services, overtime, shift coverage, those kinds of things. That also affected us. So what happens typically, and you would know this, being a mature person, typically what happens when your expenses are over your income, you tend to rely on savings accounts or reserves, as the city calls it. So our reserves were hit hard. Our operating reserve was hit hard. Our other reserves are in good shape, but our operating reserve is our savings account, and that is the reserve that got hit the hardest. So back a few months ago, specifically back in November, when we got together for the operating budget, council made a decision at that time to start to replenish our reserves. In other words, rebuild our reserves. So we built that into our tax increase. And you can ask your parents how thrilled they are to be paying taxes to the city of Red Deer. I know they'll say well, at least they should say. It's a privilege and all those things.
Nadia
and
McCabe,
so,
please come to the office.
and folks, that is why we're live this morning. That is why we are live this morning. You just heard it right there.
So the City Council supported 10 recommendations as well related to the municipal government enabling actions that reflect the community housing and homelessness integrated plan. Administration also presented an action plan for pursuing all 10 enablers within the next 3 years, including some that will be actioned immediately. Mayor Johnson, can you talk about these recommendations and enablers that were presented and why they will help to achieve in our community?
Absolutely, and that's a great question to be asked in a high school setting this morning, because if I was to walk around and just randomly ask you and some of your classmates who thinks they'll be able to afford a home by the time they get to be 30 years old, and that's only for most of you 12, 13 years from now, you'll be arguably entering into a phase of your life where you may want to own a home. And what will that look like? So it's becoming a national issue, of course, that home affordability is becoming an issue. And then, of course, the supports on people with mental illness and so on, or addictions, or whatever the case may be, is also an issue, and that's called permanent supportive housing. So Council needed to react to the reality that in our country, municipalities, cities, have to play a role, a direct role, in housing affordability, which is a role that cities traditionally don't have a role in. That role is usually by the federal government or by the provincial government. Cities typically are not, don't have the capacity, don't have the financial capacity particularly, to get into the housing market. However, the reality is changing and the need for cities to get involved is becoming more apparent. So Council decided yesterday with an administrative report that came to it that they would enable, and you talked about enablers, Jayla, in your question, enable the city to participate in a direct way in housing. So how does this happen? Typically how it would happen is the city would have excess land in its inventory, which we do have excess land in our inventory, excess housing units in our inventory, which we do have that in our inventory. We can incent people with tax breaks or capital grants or operating grants or what's called land disposition, which is a little bit of a different category. But those are 5 of the 10. I'm glad you didn't ask me to name all 10, because it was a long evening, folks, yesterday. But those are the principal 5. So we need to be able to now partner with some of our local housing providers. There's a couple of major housing providers in the city. One is Red Deer Housing. The other one is Bridges Community Living. They are major housing developers. And of course, there's the private sector, the development sector as well. We need now to be able to sit at the table, talk about some planning, then partner with lending agencies like Central Mortgage and Housing, CMHC. If you kids have never heard of CMHC before, I guarantee you over the next 10 years you're going to learn all about CMHC, because you're going to have to get involved with CMHC at some point when it comes to housing. So this is a major I would say departure for the city. This is a different road that we're going to go down, and we need to go down this road if we're going to be successful in providing housing stock, housing units in our city that it's going to meet the demand, not just of you and your fellow classmates, but from new Canadians that are coming to the city, to immigrants that are coming to the city, and the population of Alberta, and by extension the population of Red Deer, is growing from people from other provinces that are coming, and so housing really elevates itself.
Right now for contestants of Servers Got Talent in room 2107.
So folks, we're not going to be going to room 2107, but if we were, there would be a meeting there this morning, which is pretty exciting. So that is a major step, Jayla, for the city. I'm excited by it. It's an issue that I have promoted quite aggressively since becoming mayor, so I was very pleased that administration brought us those enablers, and that council supported them unanimously. You know, you get 9 people around the table. You know, go next door this morning so get 9 people around, see if they'll agree on one thing.
Baker, please come to the
It's a different
office.
thing. So it's exciting, but it's also going to be very challenging.
That's so great.
We'll see. You know, Jayla, I appreciate you saying that because housing is a fundamental right in this country. You know, it is a fundamental. Everyone has, and in fact, it's in the city's own policy that everyone has a right to safe and affordable housing. And so the challenge is making sure we have enough housing stock, enough housing units, so that you don't have to, you know, the expression is become house poor. You know, in other words, your whole paycheck goes just on a mortgage payment and whatever. So it's an exciting direction. We have to get federal support for it. I'll be in Toronto at the end of this month. I'll be talking to the federal housing minister about this plan, and I'm hoping to get some federal participation, some federal traction around it. We deserve it. We particularly deserve it in Western Canada. But that's a topic of another day, I think. And we'll see what our good minister tells us.
All right, that sounds very good.
Thank you.
Very good.
Council gave the second and third reading to repeal the Riverbend loan bylaw and the requirement for the society to prepay the loan. Mayor Johnson, when was this bylaw approved and what led to the decision to repeal?
Great question, and I'll say, Shaw viewers, you probably wondered what happened to Jayla. What happened? And of course, you know, talking to Dan, one of the great teachers here, told me this morning we're doing the interview in 2 parts this morning. So we had Jayla on the front end, and now we have Zeph on the back end, and so on. So welcome, Zeph, for sure, you bet. So let's talk about Riverbend. You know, you've probably been to Riverbend. Many of us, you know, go there. I would say multiple times during the year. You know, if it isn't to play golf, it's to do the canyon. It's to do the walking. You know, all those skiing, cross country, all those good things. Riverbend is a community asset, bar none. So back in 2007, which is a while ago, the city made a decision to build a new clubhouse for the golf course. So it got into a lending contract with the board because Riverbend is not run by the city. It's run by the Riverbend Society. So it got into a contract with the Riverbend Society, and like many decisions in life, you make them for the right reasons at the right time, and you do the best with the information you have. So on reflection, that decision was not working out. In other words, that loan was not getting paid, and it was impairing the ability of the society to reinvest in the space. So the city understood this, didn't want to burden the society with something that it couldn't afford, especially when the onus for keeping the park up eventually would fall to the city. So we decided that we would forgive the loan to Riverbend. Now, as it turns out, because Riverbend is what's called a controlled party, forgive me, Shaw viewers, but basically what that means is if you enter into a contract with the city directly,
Please come to the office.
you are a controlled party. So in building the clubhouse, the city actually lent the money to itself because Riverbend is one of its controlled parties. It's kind of like a loan that basically netted itself out. So from an accounting perspective, it did not alter the city's financial statements. You know, I talked to Jayla about the financial statements. It did not alter our financial statements in any way. So it made it easy from an accounting perspective to do it that way. But now it enables the society to reinvest in Riverbend, take its profits and reinvest in Riverbend rather than funnel them out through to the city.
All right, awesome. Was there anything else from yesterday's council meeting that you would like to mention to the viewers?
Yeah, there was a couple of things. You know, One was a very what I would call a quiet but significant win for the city. You know, we talked about our financial statements at the top of the interview today and what affected them. And one of the major effectors of the city's financial statements was revenue, particularly transit revenue, so bus revenue. And we got a report from administration yesterday around what our transit system looks like now that COVID is effectively over. And we're very, very pleased at the report that we're at now at, what is this, the 1st of May or so, we are now at 75% of what our revenues were before COVID. So this is a very, very good news story for the city, as it will impact our financial statements in a positive way at the end of this year. So I wanted to let Shaw viewers know this morning that no changes are being planned in transit service. We are looking forward to another report in the fall in terms of how the whole year, or close to the whole year, has looked. But for now, we're happy to say that nothing is changing in transit. So I wanted to say that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, for sure. So I think we're going to do a sign out here this morning, which is a great thing, you know, to our Shaw viewers. A couple of things I'd want to say. One is, for goodness sakes, everybody, be careful from an ecological point of view or environmental point of view. We put a fire ban in the city yesterday. There's a reason for that. There are many communities in Alberta now that are under siege, if you will, from wildfires. That's not what we want to see happen in the city. So yes, it's great to have a backyard fire, and I'm a big fan of that, but we need a fire ban. And a little thing I thought I would add this morning, if it's okay, Zeph, you know, from my generation, if you will, you know, we lost one of our great Canadian heroes yesterday, and I hope you get a chance to do some research, or just get on your phone today and just say the name Gordon Lightfoot. Just say the name Gordon Lightfoot into your phone today. Gordon Lightfoot was a transformational folk singer in the 60s. He became a bit of a pop and folk icon in North America, not just Canada. In the 70s and 80s, he paved the way for a lot of Canadian artists and so on. He's known for extraordinary music and extraordinary storytelling. Arguably, his greatest piece of work was what was called the Canadian Railroad Trilogy. So if you get an opportunity today to have a peek into Canadian history and how the railroad was born and shaped this country, it would be from Gordon Lightfoot. So I wanted to say that to Shaw viewers out there, that we lost a wonderful Canadian icon yesterday. Go get some of Gordy's music and enjoy it for sure. Shaw viewers, this has been a slice. This has been awesome. Been out at Lindsay Thurber this morning. There's hope in our future. This is the energy that really lifts me, that you're going to be out there 10 years from now, and you're going to be building this country, you're going to be building this city. It's pretty exciting. See you in a couple of weeks, Shaw viewers. This is Mayor Ken saying goodbye.